presidency, what does it look like?
It's currently set up to be the most Keynesian presidency in history, with a massive, up to $4 trillion spending package, only partly financed by higher taxes on corporations and the wealthy. And so that, I think, will be the focus. A lot of the people who served in the Obama administration think that the lesson they learned was focus on the economy. Everything else is going to distract you, and it's the economy that really is key. So I don't think Biden's people will want to be distracted by packing the Supreme Court or making DC and Puerto Rico states or any of the other things that the progressive wing is itching to do. I don't think they'll want to go full Green New Deal with Ocasio-Cortez. Their environmental plans are going to be carefully designed to dovetail with their spending plans. So I think that's what they aim to do. But things, don't always work out quite as you plan in the world of politics. And I think a couple of things are going to be really key. One is, the economy is in a bad way in many respects, partly because they failed to keep fiscal support going. So things are rolling over. Potentially, you even have the risk of a double dip recession. And they're not going to be able to press the start button on their fiscal expansion for months. It won't happen on Inauguration Day. It's not going to happen until it's actually passed through Congress. So there's a real lag in which things are going to probably feel like they're getting worse. Secondly, they're going to have a foreign policy crisis, I predict, early on over China and specifically over Taiwan, because the Chinese are just waiting for the moment that Biden wins to say, oh, now that awful man Trump is going, you're going to take off the tariffs, aren't you? And you're going to take off all the things that you did to Huawei and other Chinese companies. And the Chinese are going to sort of wait for Biden's response. And if Biden's people have learned anything, it surely will be not to just say yes to that, but rather to say, well, we'll only do that if you do this. That would be my expectation. And the kind of things that interest Democrats when it comes to China are slightly different from the things that interest Republicans. If the Democrats want to get into the human rights question in Xinjiang, for example, if they want to get into the Hong Kong national security law, then I think you'll quickly see détente ain't going to happen. So I think there'll be a little bit of diplomatic dueling, but I predict that early on, China starts to apply significant economic pressure to Taiwan to see what the Biden folks do. And the problem for Joe Biden is that he has actually a relatively hawkish national security team taking shape, most notably with Michel Flournoy at Defense. He himself, I think, is temperamentally more combative than Obama ever was. And what I anticipate happening is that things over Taiwan escalate quite quickly because the Chinese apply pressure and the US administration feels that it's being tested out, rather as Bill Clinton was. But this time you can't just send 2 aircraft carriers to the Taiwan Strait and expect the PRC to fold, because the problem with the US guarantee to Taiwan is that it's not credible anymore. You could sink those carriers with Chinese land-based missiles now. So I think the potential for a kind of intensification of Cold War II, which I've been writing about now for a couple of years, is quite significant. And it's the kind of thing that happens to Democratic presidents, isn't it? You get elected full of great domestic policy programs, and the next thing you know, you're in a war. It happened to Wilson, it happened to Roosevelt, it happened to Truman. Kennedy and Johnson ended up in Vietnam. Carter nearly got into hot water over Afghanistan. It's actually only recently that Democratic presidents have held back from conflicts. Clinton did until the last minute with Bosnia. And of course, Obama thinks his greatest decision was not to do anything about Syria, but just let it go to hell in a handcart. But I think the Biden presidency, part of the point of Biden is let's go back to the old days. Let's go back to the 70s. He's so much a kind of throwback politician. But that comes, I think, with this risk that when the chips are down, Democrats actually are more inclined to interpret commitments literally and to take seriously issues of human rights, which never meant anything to Trump when it came to dealing with China. So I think that's the thing that will blow them off course most likely. The fact that the economy is going to suck for a bit, and the fact that the Chinese are going to try out and just see what Biden's made of.